Symmetry and angles. Now, I learned back in the early 80s from my teacher, Bikram, corrections, alignment. So today we're going to go into the studio in Pompano Beach and we're going to explore symmetry and angles. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jimmy Barkan. I've been teaching hot yoga for 40 years. Corrections, I believe, is one of the most important tools a yoga teacher can have. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Any comments you have, put them down below. I get to all the comments. So symmetry and angles are all about alignment, understanding what to look for. As a yoga student, understanding the proper alignment in your own practice. As a yoga teacher, knowing that as well, but also understanding how to correct your students. Some people will argue that there's anatomical differences, and of course there are. Maybe it's not just connective tissue and muscular inflexibility. Maybe it's bone compression. Yes, but there's still alignment concepts that are essential. Now, as a student, understanding what to look for in your own practice. As a teacher, knowing that as well, but also understanding how to correct your students. So the first two poses we're going to look at in the studio is runner's lunge, which is in sun salutation, and crescent lunge, or what Vishnu Ghosh and Bikram call VIRABHADRASANA, which is in the salute to the god and goddesses and the salute to the moon. So let's head over to the studio with Heather and dive right into these two poses. So let's look at runner's lunge. Now, I know it's not in the Bikram flow, but actually he starts his advanced class with the sun salutation and starts with runner's lunge. So from downward dog, because that's how we do it in the Barkan flow, I want to have her bring her left leg up first so you can see a better angle. Usually we always start with the right leg. So her left leg swings through. She wants the knee right over the ankle. But one of the biggest problems people make is this hip comes up too high and the shoulders are too low. So what we got to do is we got to get the body to come lower. And many times if you step out further, longer, you can get down nice and low. So now look at the angle. Look how it just changed. And the other thing we want to do is bring this left hip back. Remember to watch that video and you can get more details on this position. But now the hips are square. Now she rolls her shoulders down and back. But look at that angle from her heel to her leg to her shoulder to the neck. So now we're going to look at crescent lunge, and I'm going to have Heather step with her right leg. So she swings all the way forward and through to crescent pose. Now, I'm going to have Heather step a little bit shorter than that. Bring a little shorter step. Hands on the hips, and she lifts up, and a lot of people get stuck here. They're too high. Their upper body is too far forward. Once again, you can see how the angle and the symmetry doesn't make sense. So what Heather could do is step out further. When she steps up initially, she's a longer position, and now she can come up, and it's okay to bend this back leg in the beginning. Once again, watch that video and you can see a little more detail about how to do this. But as she bends her back leg a little bit, she can get lower, as low as she possibly can, and now straighten the back leg. Now straighten the back leg. So when she's as low as she can possibly get, where that right thigh is parallel, now she straightens the back leg, and look at the symmetry. Look at the line. Look at the angle. So now a more advanced position is the crescent back bend in what Vishnu Ghosh and Bikram called VIRABHADRASANA. So he called this sequence VIRABHADRASANA, even though it's known as the salute to the god and goddesses. Once again, check out that video. I'll give you a little more explanation of what I'm talking about. So now the advanced position, she's going to step all the way through to the front of the mat, hands to the hips. She peels her stomach over the thigh, brings her arms overhead, and lowers down to where that thigh is parallel. Now she interlaces the fingers. If you don't have a neck issue, the head relaxes all the way back. Arms are straight, and now she reaches back behind her as she pushes off the toes of the back foot. Bikram used to always say, push up those toes, and that's how that leg is straightening. Look at that line. Look how low she is. Look how nice and parallel that thigh is, and the back leg straight. There it is. So the next two poses we're going to look at are half moon and eagle pose. And once again, so much of symmetry just is common sense, understanding the way the body looks. So we're going to look at Janice and we're going to see how her head and her arms and half moon are exactly positioned when she's standing upright and when she's going to the side. And we're going to hold that symmetry. And the same thing with eagle. We're going to look at where the hips are, where the shoulders are to get them even. So you can start to, in your own mind, understanding what these corrections are, make them for yourself, make those subtle corrections, and then get into the experience of the pose. So let's head over to the studio with Janice and look at these two poses. So now we're going to look at half moon or Ardha Chandrasana. One of the biggest mistakes people make is that they crunch their shoulders. So let's take a look at Janice first. She's going to start with her feet together, arms overhead. Interlace the index finger released as she tick-tocks left and right. Now, this is the important thing to look for. When you're upright here, you see the symmetry of her head and her arms? Her head's right in the center of her arms. Her arms are straight. This is the exact same position you need to be in when you go over to the right side. So when she lifts up and over to the right side, she's going to hold the symmetry. The mistake people make is they think they have to go down further. So their shoulders crunch or their arms bend and because they're trying to get down low. It's not about how low you can get. It's about how low you can get while maintaining the proper position. So let's take it to the other side. Take a deep breath in, and as she pushes her hips to the right, her arms reach to the left. And see the symmetry? See how her chin is up and her arms are back and her chest is out? That's what you want to look for in the half moon pose. So now as we get to eagle pose, in the old days, if you look at Bikram's red cover book, he had everybody really high. So I'm going to show you that one first. So she brings her right arm under the left, and her leg goes over, but she's not really going to sit down too much. So this is how the eagle pose was taught by Vishnu Ghosh, because that's how Bikram brought this posture to the United States. I think it's too high because I think you still have to get down lower in order to get the possible result. Okay, and I'll have Janice change for a second. Then at one point, he had everybody go really low. He'd say, be the lowest person in the room. I'll have her do the left side. So she brings her left arm under, and she gets down really, really low. And as she brings her hands down to the fingertips are in line with the nose, remember, watch that video again. You can see the difference between Bikram-Barkan eagle pose. I think it crunches the body. She's all crunched in here. So come up for a second. The way I was taught back in the early to mid 80s, we don't go that low. We go just enough where you can see a little bit of thigh in the front mirror, like awkward pose, second part. So she brings her left arm under. She's going to squat. Remember, watch that video. You can get more of the details. But I want you to look at the symmetry. Now she brings her left leg over the right leg. She's going to bring her upper body back. So she's going to lift out of the waist. The fingertips are going to line up with the forehead, arms pressed into the rib cage, and now she's lifting out of the waist. So now we magically turn to the side because I want you to see a side angle for this pose. So now she brings her left leg on top. And if she stays forward, she's still crunching. So now she's going to bring her upper body back without coming up. And see the difference here? Now she's lifting out of her waist. Tailbone scoops under. Now, once again, we magically turn back. So now I want you to see two other things I want you to look for in the mirror when you're doing your own practice and as a teacher for your future students. So now she's got her right arm under. She brings her right leg over. And if one hip's too low, bring the lower hip up. If one shoulder's too high, bring the higher shoulder down. It's easier to bring the lower hip up and the higher shoulder down, so you can now see the symmetry of her shoulders and her hips. We're all looking for symmetry, we're all looking for those proper angles. So once again, it's all about common sense. It's all about symmetry, all about understanding the angles. So now we're going to get down to the floor poses, and we're going to go over 4 very common postures, not just in the Bikram world and the hot yoga world, but in the yoga world in general. Cobra, locust, bow, or what I call the Cobra series, which is a common series in many different styles of yoga. Shivananda, it's also listed in David Collier's wonderful anatomy book. So let's head over to the studio with Janice and Heather and look at these 4 poses. Now in Cobra pose, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make in class is they think they have to bring their hands off the floor because it's more advanced. The problem is, if you're not to your belly button or your navel and you bring your hands off the floor, all you're doing is torquing out your shoulders. So now Heather comes up just a few inches off the ground. She lifts her hands up, and you can see all she's doing is torquing her shoulders, and sometimes the feet want to lift up too. So let's have her come down again. Takes a deep breath in. She's going to come all the way to the belly button. Don't worry about bringing your hands off the ground. The elbows are going to drop down toward the waist. Come up a little bit more. As the elbows drop down, the shoulders drop down. Now look how beautiful this angle is. From the feet coming together, heels together, all the way up, elbows to the waist. Look at that angle. Now, if eventually you're more advanced and you want to lift your hands off the floor, you still have to get all the way up to the navel. So she takes a deep breath in, she comes up. And you have to really engage these inner thighs. And if I hold her feet, and now she lifts her hands off the ground, that's the support that you need, and that's the angle that you need. But look at that angle, and look at that symmetry. So now we're doing locust posed or Salabhasana. So her arms are all the way underneath. Remember, watch that video, you can see more details. She's going to bring her right leg up so that the angle is shoulder, hip, ankle, toes. You don't want to bend the knee. So if you bend the knee, look at how the angle changes. If it's too low, look where the angle is. We want that hip bone on the forearm. And look at the angle here, shoulder, hip, and knee, straight back. Now when she does both legs, a little different. The mouth and the head shift. So now the mouth is on the floor. The head and neck are in a changed position. She takes a deep breath in, and she slowly lifts up. She can bend her knee a little bit at first, but you don't want to keep the knees bent because once again, look how the angle is now not properly positioned. She straightens her legs, and now you can see the proper angle. And down she comes. Look at that symmetry. Look at those angles. And the last posture we're looking at is the bow, or Dhanurasana. So she's going to grab her feet from the outside, take a deep breath in, and she kicks up. We want the body to be on the lower abdomen. So if she's too far back on her hips, look at the difference. Look at that angle. If she's too far forward on her chest, she's not kicking back enough. But if she's on her stomach, now she kicks back. Look at the difference. Now she still has the height. Her head is still working back. Her feet are in the exact same line with the shoulders. Now we magically turn the other direction, so I want you to see the position of her wrists and her shoulders and her hands. So she lifts up. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they protrude this wrist. We want the wrist to be flat. So shoulder, elbow, wrist to the knuckles. To the knuckles is a straight line back. And once again on the stomach, see how the knuckles are nice and flat, the wrists are straight. And that is the bow pose. So remember, it's like the key that unlocks the doors. Those tumblers have to fit in just right to get the intended release. And the reason why I created this episode is so you can start to become aware of your own alignment concepts in your own practice. And as teachers looking at students, we play a game in the Teacher Training Program course. And by the way, if you're interested in becoming a yoga teacher in the Barkan method, 200-hour, 300-hour, 500-hour, there are applications below. We have an on-demand online course where we play this game. And the game is called What's Wrong with This Picture? So I'll post a picture on our Facebook group, and then students will come in and they'll say, okay, this hip has to be here. The shoulder is too high here. The symmetry is off here. Because as a teacher, you can say the most amazing bullet points ever known to man. But if your student, say, is holding their foot wrong and standing bow, it doesn't matter. Make the correction. So that's our episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. Any comments, put them down below. Any suggestions, put them down below. I get to all the comments, and I'll see you at the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.